that I stayed 8 years old for about 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
Couldn't drive, couldn't wear makeup or jewelry or bra, or I couldn't even wash and set my own hair. It's really awkward to be an adult woman and not be able to do a simple thing like know how to work a blow dryer.
You had become like an 8-year-old.
An 8-year-old.
Keep watching to learn more. You can now download all 9 copies of the New Thinking Aloud magazine for free, or order beautiful printed copies. Go to newthinkingaloud.org. New Thinking Aloud is presented by the California Institute for Human Science, a fully accredited university offering distant learning graduate degrees that focus on mind, body, and spirit. The topics that we cover here. We are particularly excited to announce new degrees emphasizing parapsychology and the paranormal. Visit their website at cihs.edu.
Book 4 in the New Thinking Aloud dialogue series is Charles T. Tart, 70 Years of Exploring Consciousness and Parapsychology, now available on Amazon.
Thinking Aloud. Conversations on the leading edge of knowledge and discovery with psychologist Jeffrey Mishlove.
Hello and welcome. Our topic today is trauma and the subconscious mind. And my guest, Marilyn Murray, is a therapist, a sexual abuse researcher, a well-known public speaker, an individual who conducts groups with sexual abusers at the Arizona State Penitentiary. Marilyn, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you here. You got involved in psychology and dealing with psychological trauma really as a result of your own personal experiences, sort of, I guess what we really might say, through the front door.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
I happened to be born in Kansas to a very, very happy family, sort of a Bible Belt typical product of the 50s, and where everything was rosy in my life, so I thought. My husband and I lived in Scottsdale, Arizona, and had 2 children, and had our own family business. Very successful and active in church and social activities.
So there, for all the world, you were a model citizen.
A model wife, mother, business person. My husband and I owned an art gallery, and by the time I was 35, I was one of the best-known Western art dealers in the country. Mm-hmm. So it was a very different field from psychology. I also helped a friend, though, start some groups called More Than Friends, women support groups. And I did that in, 1975 through 78 and 9. Mm-hmm. And became more interested in psychology as a result of...
Women helping women.
Yes, very much as a lay person. Mm-hmm. But during this time, one of the things that most people didn't know about me was that I was having a lot of physiological problems. As a child in Kansas, I had asthma all the time and a lot of colds and that type of thing, and always seemed to be activated in the wintertime by cold weather. I moved to Arizona when I was 17, straight out of high school, specifically because I had problems with asthma. And when you live in Phoenix, of course, the weather's not cold.
It's supposed to go away, isn't it?
So the asthma did go away. But instead it was replaced by a lot of headaches and back pain, leg pain, a lot of body pain.
And this reached a point in your life where it seemed like it was killing you.
Yes. I started taking, when I was in my early 20s, about 8 to 10 to 12 Excedrin a day. But that had escalated in 1980 to the point where I was taking 25 Excedrin a day.
Just to deal with the pain?
Yes. Plus Elavil and Alka-Seltzer and
and you'd not been injured?
No,
we're not talking about that kind of trauma. The pain was just there.
The pain was there, and I had gone through Scripps Institute and to many, many different doctors, and they all just basically sort of patted me on the back and said, there isn't anything that we can do for you.
It's all in your head.
Yes. And
which is, I suppose, where it was.
In fact, one doctor said I had a 400 horsepower engine on a Model T chassis, which didn't exactly help a lot. But it was pretty much the idea of this is a pain that you're just going to have to get used to and just basically live with it the rest of your life. And that type of thing is easy for somebody to say, but when you have to endure that, what I say is pain is a great leveler. It's a great humbler. When you have that kind of pain that knocks you down, and every time you try to get to your knees, it knocks you down again, you become suicidal. And that's what happened to me. Even though I was working in a religious-based organization and was very active in that way spiritually, I always said that if spirituality was a prerequisite for healing, certainly I should have qualified, because at that time I was very active in those that type of activities. But instead, I was becoming very suicidal just simply from the fact that I couldn't get away from the pain.
And that's really what brought you into the world of psychology and seeking psychotherapy for this condition, because nothing else seemed to work for it.
I had a friend that had been to the Bay Area to see a therapist that did regressive counseling and worked in the area of childhood trauma and
using hypnotic regression.
Yes. I don't know that I would want to use the term exactly hypnotic regression, but a type of regressive therapy. And she had been helped greatly by this, and she really encouraged me to come. And I just said, no, I don't need that. You had a lousy childhood and you know it, and that's for you, but my childhood is perfect, and as well as my adult life, and I just really don't have anything that I need to deal with. And so she worked on me for about a year to try to get me to come. Well, from 1979 to 1980. But by 1980, about September, I was really at a very, very low point. And
now, you thought you had a perfect childhood, but did you remember your childhood completely?
Yes, I have an excellent memory. I can remember back from about age 2 on. And always prided myself on the fact that I didn't have any basically gaps in my memory like a lot of my friends that would say they did. So consequently, in September of 1980, she saw that I was becoming very suicidal, and so she basically said, I'm not going to take no for an answer. I'm going to insist that you go for this therapy. And she called and made the appointment and drove me to the plane and just literally
got you there,
shoved me off. And so I arrived in Burlingame in the Bay Area here in California on Thanksgiving weekend of 1980, just protesting, no, not me. I had a perfect childhood. I don't need this. But as a result of the therapy, I was only supposed to stay 2 weeks. That was my schedule, because this was just before Christmas, and I had a lot of plans naturally. But it's a long story, which I share in the talk that I give around the country.
We don't have time to go into all the details in this program.
So I'm just going to make it very, very brief. But after 10 days of therapy of me protesting, no, that I don't need this, through the very fine therapeutic techniques of Dr. Peter Danilchuk, who was my therapist at the time, I was able to regress, and it took me back to being 8 years old, living in a big old house in Wichita, Kansas in 1944 during World War II. And I found out that I had been the victim of a gang rape when I was 8. I had been walking home. I'd been to choir practice after school and was walking home in the late afternoon when it was already starting to get dark. And a group of soldiers were walking along and saw me coming along and hid behind some hedges and jumped out and grabbed me and pulled me back into an empty lot.
So in spite of your very good memory, it took quite a bit of therapy for you to recover that.
Yes, very intense therapy. And but what happened for me, because the attack itself, there was a lot of violence in it, and a lot of very terrifying things for me, and considerable sexual abuse. It was something that was so traumatic that my conscious mind could not deal with it, because I came from I was an only child up until I just had a brand new baby sister, and my parents were exceedingly loving to me, both physically and verbally, and consequently I had not known any type of physical abuse at all, and I didn't have brothers or sisters that I even tussled with. And that was pre-TV days, and the only movies I saw were like Walt Disney, and the most violence I'd seen was an occasional Western. So consequently, to use a psychological term, my cognitive dissonance was enormous. What I was used to and what I expected to get and what I actually received were so drastic that in order for my whole psyche to survive, to exist, I had to completely undergo a massive, what I would term a psychological split. And at that time, I became literally a different person who took that child, that sobbing child that was created as a result of the attack, and buried her. And for me, what I re-experienced was taking that child and putting her in a box, digging a hole, and literally burying that box in the ground.
Sort of like Dorothy leaving Kansas in a tornado.
Definitely.
Only you didn't end up in the Emerald City of Oz.
No. Because my particular trauma went in with a lot of violence, it came out that way.
In the therapy.
In the therapy. I term the night that it came out as, I always refer to it as my volcano, because literally I just exploded very violently. And my first regressive session lasted 36 hours without stopping. The regression just coming and coming. And
it's unusual for a therapist to stick with you for 36 hours, but I guess sometimes that's necessary.
Well, actually, there was a night in that when Dr. Danilchuk wasn't working with me that I was staying in the home of Babette Baker, the lady that she was the assistant director of the center, and she took care of me during the night. But basically, it continued to roll that whole time. But consequently, because it came out with that type of violence, it left me as an 8-year-old. And
at some point, some other therapist might have said, my God, she's really having a nervous breakdown now, and not recognize that as being part of what's obviously a healing process looking at you now.
Well, that's one of the things, of course, that I deal with now, and I'd like to come back to that a little bit. But what happened was, instead of me being able to go home at the end of 2 weeks, obviously.
You were left as an 8-year-old.
8-year-old. I could not read nor write beyond an 8-year-old, and I have samples of my handwriting as an 8-year-old that are rather startling to see.
And I've seen the pictures of you. You looked like an 8-year-old.
Even the hair on my legs underneath my arms stopped growing. So I underwent a lot of physiological changes. My body began to change. I started losing weight because I was eating only the foods that I'd eaten as a child.
It was as if you had to go back to that time and redo it and heal what had happened to you then.
Yes, literally recreating the actual incident. So where most people stay in that type of therapy, basically, I did want to mention that I stayed 8 years old for about 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
Couldn't drive, couldn't wear makeup or jewelry or bra, or I couldn't even wash and set my own hair. It's really awkward to be an adult woman and not be able to do a simple thing like know how to work a blow dryer.
You were literally, you had become like an 8-year-old.
An 8-year-old.
You weren't able to live with your family at that time either,
I needless to say, had to stay in Burlingame. My vocabulary was very limited, was an 8-year-old. And like when I would try to write, I would hear this controlling adult part of me come in and try to tell me how to spell something, and this little kid would say, no, I want to do it myself.
And had the therapeutic process been interrupted at that time, it might have been left you in a severely regressed condition.
Well, it definitely wouldn't have helped. I don't know exactly what would have happened, but I'm very pleased to say that I was under the care of someone who knew what to do for me. Where most of the people who came to that center stay an average of 3 weeks and 6 weeks at the maximum, I had to stay and literally relive going through that sexual abuse and that attack 4 hours a day, a few days, even 6 hours, 5 days a week for 7 months.
It had been buried in your subconscious mind.
For 36 years. And for me, now that doesn't mean that everybody has to have that many hundreds and hundreds of hours of intensive therapy, but for me to be well, that's what I had to have.
Well, you had experienced an extraordinary trauma as well.
also during the time that I was in therapy, since a lot of what we're talking about is sort of the mind-body connection and some of the things that we have discussed in the past, it's interesting in the fact that during my therapy, as I progressed to deeper and deeper levels, I basically went to an area of the unconscious that probably few human beings have ever had the opportunity to go, because I was literally working down day after day after day, and had the opportunity to set all of my current responsibilities aside, so that if you're talking about apples and oranges, I was leaving apples at home and dealing only with the oranges of the past, where in so much therapy we sort of get a mixed up fruit salad. And so this way, I had the opportunity just to go back and deal with the past.
This particular
episode. Event, and didn't have to at night come out and worry about dealing with my family or taking care of my children or cooking or whatever.
And did the headaches and the other pain begin to go away immediately?
Not immediately. No, in fact, they intensified during the therapy. The therapy was exceedingly painful for me physiologically, because not only did I have to re-experience the emotions of the terror and the fear and the abandonment and all, but I also had to allow the feelings that my physical body experienced at the time. So literally, when I experienced my sessions, my body had a memory of its own that my conscious mind wasn't controlling.
Can you explain that?
Okay. For instance, when I would regress, then my body just takes over, and my body relives the attack. In my case, I was picked up and kicked and thrown a lot, so my body literally rolls around the room, and
all of that memory was stored right in your muscles and had to be acted out.
And like my legs and arms were twisted in, like my arm twisted behind my back, that kind of thing. And during the sessions, my legs and arms do those things and go into positions that if I right now were to try to show you, I couldn't do. And sometimes they would cramp into those, and the doctor would have to sort of help me. Needless to say, he was always right beside me, very carefully watching, making sure.
Now, I imagine if there are people who are viewing the program now and they're thinking maybe they've also had a trauma, what you're describing, though, the therapy might seem more frightening to them than the memory of the trauma or the thought of the trauma or the thought of alleviating whatever tension is in the subconscious mind as a result of the trauma.
Well, needless to say that mine was an exceptional case. And since I've become a therapist and worked with a lot of people, I would say that I haven't come across one like mine.
The fact that you would become a therapist really says that you came through it okay.
Yes, in fact, I'd like
perhaps even stronger
to pick it up and tell you what happened with me was the fact that I finally did go home in June of 1981 after basically I felt that I'd lost winter. I came at Thanksgiving and I went home in the middle of the summer, and it was like what happened to Christmas and Valentine's Day and Easter, all those things. But I was totally a changed different person. I'd lost 30 pounds. I went from a size 12 to a 6. In the past, I hadn't ever been able to use my legs much. I walked fine, but I couldn't run or jog or exercise or water ski or do any of those things. And part of that was part of the way my body reacted to the trauma. For instance, the men in the attack sat on my legs, and it was an icy cold late afternoon, and so it made my legs numb. And also the fact that I felt that my legs were useless because I couldn't run fast enough to get away. So, and also the asthma, one of the things that I found is that asthma recreates oral rape. You cough and you choke and you can't breathe. And for me, those were ways, both with my legs and the asthma, that my body, my subconscious mind was using my body to try to tell my conscious mind what had happened to me. Now, that doesn't mean that happens to everyone, but for me, that's the way it was working. So consequently, when those were released, then my subconscious didn't need to use my body that way anymore.
So your body belonged to you again.
Yes. And so consequently, the asthma completely went away. Where I always used to have a lot of colds. In the last 6 years, I've had 2 colds. And those have been times when I was undergoing a lot of other personal stress. But I now can do all sorts of things with my legs. And
you're a champion ballroom dancer, we might mention.
Yes,
an award-winning ballroom dancer.
That's my hobby right now is ballroom dancing, and I exercise very strenuously with that, and dancing sometimes 2 and 3 hours at an aerobic pace at a time without any problem. In fact, when I went home right after my therapy in June of '81, I put 100 miles on a jet ski in 3 days and did all sorts of mountain climbing. I do 100 sit-ups a day. And so I'm in better physical shape than I was when I was a teenager.
So from a theoretical perspective, then, one might say that from your experience, it would seem as if trauma creates some kind of a block or a tightness, some kind of a locking that occurs in the mind-body system that really, in spite of all the success that you had in your earlier life, it was still, in a sense, holding you back from an even greater potential.
And what you're talking about was, all going through the therapy, I was saying, what is all of this? Just exactly what you're saying. And so with the encouragement of my therapist, when I went back to Arizona, I decided to go back to school. I had only had less than a freshman year of college because I'd been married young, and we'd started right into our own business.
Sure.
And so I decided to go back to school, and I basically wanted to go because I wanted to find out what the books had to say about somebody like me that could explain this type of split to me.
And you discovered they hadn't written too much.
No, in fact, I started in talking to every professor that I had, a psychology professor and any therapist that I could find, and I'd say, what did they teach you in graduate school about this type of a split that's a result of a massive trauma? And pretty much they said, well, there's things in the DSM-2 or DSM-3 about post-traumatic stress syndrome. But as I started to research that, I found that a lot of the research is done on men who have been in wartime trauma situations or Holocaust victims. But someone like me, there was just very, very little written. And the more therapists that I talked to, they said, well, when we were in school, no one taught us how to deal with a sexual abuse or a child abuse victim such as yourself. And that there just wasn't anything.
The statistics are just coming out today of how prevalent this sort of thing is.
You're right. And so consequently, I began to be very excited as I was going to school because I felt that there were some things that I'd experienced and knew that really needed to be told.
In fact, there was a tendency amongst Freud, who first discovered these sorts of things, not so much amongst Freud, I suppose, but amongst his followers, to when people in psychoanalysis would begin to come up with experiences such as yours to treat it as a fantasy rather than as an actual event.
Yes, definitely.
And that I understand is changing today. And
yes, I'm grateful.
In psychoanalysis, there's a whole other view of looking at memories of sexual traumas as being memories rather than fantasies.
Alice Miller has some excellent books regarding that. What happened for me when I went back to school was I decided that for one of my classes that I would literally dissect my therapy. And as I did that, and the things that happened to me, especially as I'd gone so deeply into the unconscious, I began to sort of evolve a theoretical principle, which I thought only was unique to me. But as time went by, I finished my BA and I started into my master's. By the way, I finished 3 years of a BA, 2 years of a master, into the start of the PhD program in about 44 months. And I didn't think that was too shabby for an 8-year-old.
Superwoman here.
But consequently, I began to, when I was working in my master's internship, I was working at a center for sexual abuse. It's actually called the Center Against Sexual Assault in Phoenix, Arizona. And I worked with both teenagers and adults, both victims and offenders there. And much to my great surprise, I found that this theoretical concept that I was developing also generalized to them.
And what is that concept?
Oh, that we'll do another time.
Oh, all right. Well, could you summarize it in a sentence or two?
It's really probably more than what I would be able to do in the remaining type of the
Let me jump a bit then, because I want to cover this. You currently speak throughout the United States. Yes. And one of the interesting things that I've observed about you, Marilyn, is that you've become a phenomenon yourself, in the sense that when you speak to an audience and describe your own experiences to them, perhaps as we have been, although I know you can be much more powerful and emotional when you really speak about it rather than are interviewed about it, a large percentage of the people who hear you are able to get in touch with the fact that something happened to them and something is buried inside of them as well. And the statistics show that maybe 25 to 30% of the American population has had some kind of an abuse like this, that we're all frozen and blocked in different ways because of this.
It's what you're describing as a phenomena that happens every time that I speak. I've had I've always at least one person, and as high as 10, as I speak, uncover a totally repressed trauma, specifically usually a sexual abuse. And someone asked me once what I did, and I said, I'm a bottle opener. I don't know why I was chosen to be this, except that when people do hear me, usually if they have what I call a sobbing, hurting child within them, it reaches out and touches that sobbing, hurting child within me that comes up and talks when I give my presentation and speak. And so what I do basically is to help those people get in contact with a therapist or someone that can help them. My former therapist, Dr. Danilchuk, and his wife and myself started a counseling center in San Mateo called Restoration Therapy Center. And there I've been active for the last couple of years doing therapy myself, and found that not just sexual abuse, but trauma in general, whether it's emotional trauma, physical trauma, sexual trauma, are things that can cause a child to shut down and not be the original child that they were created to be, and becomes this, what I call this sobbing, hurting child. And I'm throwing out a few terms of which you asked me about my theory. Right now, what I've done is I have chosen this year to take a sabbatical from my clinical work, and I'm excited about the fact that I have several books that I have in the mill, one on my own personal story, one on the theoretical concept that you asked me about, which will be available hopefully within this next year.
We've got about a minute, but I think we must touch on the fact that you've taken your work even further by going into the Arizona State Penitentiary and sharing your experience, the experience of being a victim, with individuals who are perpetrators of sexual crimes.
That's probably one of my most special, I don't know what you call it, ministry, but 80 to 85% of the men who are perpetrators, who are offenders, have also been victims. So I go to them as not victim to offender, but victim to victim. And the life changes that have happened there have just been very, very special to me. And the men who I have now 6 groups in the Arizona State Prison at Florence, Arizona, of adults, and the life changes that I've seen and the letters that I've gotten from them and the phone calls and all make everything that I've gone through really worth having endured it to see the changes in their lives.
Well, Marilyn, you certainly have come full circle from a successful person to an 8-year-old, the helpless victim, to a therapist and a healer, and one now who can extend beyond even healing to working with, as you say, the perpetrators who are also victims. Thank you very much for being with me. It's been a pleasure.
Enjoyed it.
And thank you very much for being with us.
New Thinking Aloud is presented by the California Institute for Human Science, a fully accredited university offering distant learning graduate degrees that focus on mind, body, and spirit. The topics that we cover here. We are particularly excited to announce new degrees emphasizing parapsychology and the paranormal. Visit their website at cihs.edu. You can now download all 9 copies of the New Thinking Aloud magazine for free or order beautiful printed copies. Go to newthinkingaloud.org.
Book 4 in the New Thinking Aloud dialogue series is Charles T. Tart, 70 Years of Exploring Consciousness and Parapsychology, now available on Amazon.
For early access to our videos and live stream events, sign up for our free weekly newsletter at newthinkingaloud.org.